investing, it is time to hop right into fundamental analysis, and this is a great pillar. It's the first of four, and what you're going to experience is a lot of epiphany, a lot of illumination. It isn't like there's one thing where it finally clicks once. It's like a whole bunch of really cool littler clicks, like smaller clicks, like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Oh, I see why we do that now. Investing in fundamentals, it's going to make sense to you. It's going to be simple. It's going to be logical. It's going to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's why people get rich. It's going to be really, really fun and really, really cool. I know that another thing that's going to happen, especially in the first two or three pillars, is you're going to begin to see what making really good investment decisions looks like, and you're going to understand what it doesn't look like, and the clarity you'll receive on feeling good about and confident about making a financial decision. It's just so many people are hesitant to click that button and buy that stock or buy that real estate. You're going to have so much more confidence. So we'll get into it. I'd be remiss if I didn't congratulate you. You know, I had this great coach in college, and he'd get after you when you didn't do things right. But I'll tell you, when you were working hard and doing things right, he was the first guy to come up and slap you on the butt and say, hey, Tanner, great job today. Way to bring the energy. Way to rock and roll. And that's the way I feel about you. Great job showing up, bringing the energy, ready to rock and roll. We're going to make it fun. We're going to make it simple, and we're going to use some real stuff. I'll get into what the realities of this is in just a bit. So the first thing we're going to do is what's in this for you is we're going to build context every pillar. We're going to reset the context every pillar. Look, there's four pillars. It's a lot like having 4 years or 4 seasons. You know, you do different things to the garden every year. It's not like you till the garden once and now it's ready to plant for 90 years. You retill. If you're going to plant, you retill it. If you're going to plant, you refertilize. If you're going to plant or harvest, you redo it. So every single time, be prepared for some of that repetition. And repetition is easier to go through if you know what it's for. When I was playing basketball, I did the same drills in the post every day, knowing that, hey, this is what I do. I'm getting better at this every day. So when you understand what repetition's for, the repetition is exciting to do. It's not arduous at all. So we'll get our head right, and you'll say, that's right. This is how we learn it, and then I can receive the information better. So there's a lot to do in this pillar. So in this section, we'll hit these right here, I think. Okay, we'll identify some basic cash flow patterns. And my friend Robert Kiyosaki wrote a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and in there he says, look, if you understand how cash flows through a financial statement, it can give you the lighting to see what's going on and how things are happening, and who's getting rich and who's getting poor if you follow the cash flow. He gives some great basic examples in his book. I'm going to take the liberty to go into more detail on that and show several financial patterns and statements. So the goal is you'll have an aha moment. Says, wow, boy, I learned how this cash flow looks. I can really see stuff, and you'll find that, wow, there aren't as many secrets to this as I thought. I mean, it's pretty basic. In fact, you know, Warren Buffett obviously is brilliant. I wouldn't claim to know what he knows, but I'll tell you what, the way he does things is going to make a lot of sense to you. You're going to say, wow, I can see why he does do, what we do understand about what he does is going to be pretty cool. So there you go. We're going to do these 8 numbers, and this will be an exciting point. Change your life. I mean, life-altering numbers, and you're going to feel excitement here because you're going to know there'll be this resonance. When I go through these 8 numbers, there's going to be this resonance where you're going to say, wow, I do this. My life changes. I mean, it's simple, but you can see if I concentrate on those 8, my life gets better. I mean, it alters where I'm headed like a plane, just changing direction to a better place. I'm also going to give you 3 goals. Anyone sets these goals, they're better. Anyone sets it, you just set them. I don't even care if you achieve them. Just by setting them, things start happening different. And if you achieve them, even better. But we're going to set these goals, and it's awesome. When you talk about fundamentals, this is what most people think, is this stuff right here. So we'll have a section on that, introduce the corporate financial statement, the key metrics, the stuff we look for. And it'll be nice because, you know, there's not a recipe, but there is a criteria, and recipes and criteria are very different. But the one thing I can give you is a good criteria for a beginner, and even for an advanced guy, maybe to simplify a little, to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for. So I'll share with you my basic criteria. We won't get too advanced. And I'll share you where I'm comfortable in people starting in their paper trading to get learning it. Okay, we're going to introduce sovereign stuff and some of the mess that's out there, some of the storm clouds that are still lingering, and then we're going to look into the future. This is going to be a good pillar, man. It's going to be awesome. Now, we will not skip over our disclaimer. We will not do that because people will say, hey, it's just legalese. We get it. There's risk involved. You don't need to spend a lot of time on this. But boy, we rob ourselves of an opportunity if we take that attitude. So let's go slow. It would just devastate me personally if people misunderstood what they're here to do. If someone came in here with that looking for a fish instead of wanting to learn to fish type thing we hear about, that would be devastating to me. I'm not a stock picker and I don't give people fish. I don't feel any fulfillment in that personally. If I say, oh, here's a stock pick, go buy this, go buy gold, well, who got smarter there and how did I really help anybody? So if we say gold is fungible though, why is it fungible and what does that mean? Well, now we're learning, see? So there's a difference between recommending stuff and advising people on stuff and helping people educate and understand and make their own decisions, which is where all of us are headed. That's what the Cashflow Academy is for. Now, I'm going to use some transactions and also some searches and some examples of assets and specific stocks for illustrative purposes. Now, sometimes I use Acme because it's just easier to use fictitious. But I also have an appreciation that the students really like it when they see a stock they've heard of before, like a Coca-Cola or something like that. And so I'll use real examples, and I have so many trades, good, bad, ugly, successful, unsuccessful, so much richness in the experiences of trades that I can share with you that I just would be remiss if I didn't show some actual real stuff. Now the risk in that is that people focus on money rather than process, and again their greed might overcome them and they're looking at result instead of process. So my commitment to you is I'll show you some real stuff intermixed in with our Acme and our ABC and XYZ stuff, but your promise to me is that you paper trade and that you learn principles and that you learn techniques, that you don't just say, oh yeah, he made this, I'm making a guarantee I'm going to make. People are so greedy and they lose the beauty of the process of really learning. There's risk in this. There's just no question about it. Well, this is the first pillar, fundamentals. It's not the fourth pillar, risk management yet. So be patient, paper trade. In many of these sections, I will give you homework. In this one, I'm not going to, but I'll give you homework. And without reservation, I'll say get your coach. Now, let's start with that context I talked about, and that review of getting our mind right and setting a learning context. You will receive this information much better if you realize you're going to have a series of epiphanies that are it's really like a great meal, like several courses of a great meal. It doesn't just one day say, oh, I had one big click and I went from being dumb to smart. It's very much a journey like you would play the piano or the drums. So if a person has this reality, this stuff becomes so delicious and enjoyable to experience. It's a better learning thing. I'll give you a little history on the Cashflow Academy. When we started off, we did not want to be in the coaching business. Whenever it was, years and years. The first 10 years we were in business teaching, we said this is where we are, this is where we want to be, this is where we can be most profitable as a business and have the less headache. Because when you start getting into groups of 3 or 4 or smaller groups, it's time intensive. You have to have someone giving someone personal attention. It's much like it's easier to teach like a group aerobics class than to give people individual training. As a one-on-one trainer, a small 2-person or 3-person group. And so we decided against doing coaching. Well, 2 things changed our mind. We still don't think it's as nearly as profitable as business-wise on our side as this, just to be frank. But one of the things that really bothered me is we're having people make this ascent like crazy. And they write emails and they're going crazy. They say, oh, this is awesome. I mean, you're so simple. This is such a great program. We love this. No one ever says, oh, I hated this. They love this. I say, great, are you doing it? And they're like, well, I really know how, but I'm working on my paper trading still, blah, blah, blah. I says, yeah, are you doing it? Oh, yeah. And some people say, yes, I am. Yes, I am. And I was happy for those that got to hear. But in my opinion, there were too many, more than I was comfortable with, that would get up here and get stuck. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of this, because my major in college was exercise physiology, and I don't get on the treadmill like I should. My behavior is not incongruent with my knowledge of physiology. And so so I will be absolutely unapologetic, is the reason we started doing coaching. And I will tell you, just get in it. I'm not going to give you a long sales pitch on it. I'm just going to tell you, go get in it and invest in yourself and do it. Because that way, your chances of having this happen just go up huge when you have someone that's not teaching you, but someone saying, okay, here's what we're doing this week. Here's the paper trades we're going to make this week. Here's the searches we're going to learn. Here's the technical analysis we're going to practice on. To go to practice, you win games. With no practice, you don't win games. Any coach that went and just did a chalk talk and a playbook isn't going to win a game. You got to get out on the floor, practice implementing this stuff. So I'm going to hammer on that if I'm going to take the work and time and hassle to put together the best coaching program I know how to do, then I'm going to expect people to get in there and take it to here. Because guess what? That's when the money has a chance to come. It doesn't have any chance to come if we stop at knowledge. When we get into implementation, now you got a chance to do something with it. So it's fun and it's awesome and the learning's great. Well, so is the implementation, because that's where it can get real. As you look at filling those gaps, many of you are familiar with my Education Continuum. You might know about that. What this does is it helps me stay humble. Because what happens is sometimes when people make this, they confuse themselves with proficient. For whatever reason, women don't have near the problem with this that men do. I don't know why that is, but it's just been my experience that once you show a guy something, they think, oh, I got this. I know how to do it. I don't need instructions, right? I got this. So the Education Continuum keeps you humble, where you ask yourself, okay, am I really proficient, or did I just become aware of something new? Is it where I can get an A on a test, or could I really go out and do this? Because the market demands proficiency. It's not happy with just mere competency, which is another reason for getting out practiced and going beyond just the book smart stuff of saying, yeah, I know what an option is. Yeah, I know what Forex is. Yeah, I know what fundamentals are. Knowing what the 4 pillars are and being proficient in the 4 pillars, oh my word, that's 2 different things. So this course is designed to get you completely out of this ignorance thing as far as we possibly can, and get you into total awareness, and even dip your toe into competency so you can start getting into this practice to get over here with the Cashflow Academy coaching stuff. So that's pretty cool. I don't want our coaches teaching. Our coaches are supposed to coach. I'm the teacher. I'll teach. These guys coach you up and make sure you're doing stuff and give you exercises and run practice just like a basketball practice. We're winning championships, baby. So you're going to find that on the first 2 pillars, we're just going to be gathering information to make better decisions. I said earlier, as you went through this, you'd have a few things click and say, gal, I can see why we're doing this. This is going to make a better investing decision. So this is in the information gathering process. We'll do it here. Later, we'll take a position of cash flow and manage sudden change. But I will say this final context thing before we dive into fundamentals. The final thing I'll say is don't expect yourself to be right all the time. I said that we'd start to get clear on what a good investing decision feels like and looks like. A good investing decision does not feel like knowing what the future is for sure. In other words, there'll never be a time in Warren Buffett's life where they call him the Oracle of Omaha. Well, he's never said that of himself. That's other people that have said that. He's just saying, look, I feel good about this investment based on the numbers I've run and based on what I see. And I will manage the risk if it changes. And so making a great investment decision is less about having a sense of surety about the outcome and more about having a sense of surety about where it is right now. In other words, look, I don't know where, my 13 or 14-year-old son will go in his basketball career. I have no idea whether he'll make it to high school, college, and the NBA. But I'll tell you what, I look at what he's doing right now, and I'm bullish. I'm optimistic on what he knows, what he can do now, and that's an exciting feeling, and it makes me feel very confident in suggesting to him to continue to work in that direction of playing varsity basketball because of what I see now. So the surety of that is I have no idea where he'll go, and for all I know, he could tear an ACL tomorrow, pull a hamstring, take out an Achilles tendon, and his career's over. That can happen. But I'm not scared to have him go, provide an opportunity for him to have him go practice foul shots because he might turn an ankle. Right now, he's a solid player. And both my sons, they're solid players, and there's no reason not to be bullish. It's a good decision to say, hey, go play. Let's see where this goes. This is a good one. Let's see where it goes. I'm not afraid. It's got a real shot to do well. That's what investing decisions feel like. A good investing decision is the opposite of a 401k where you just throw your money at something and it's the opposite of diversification. Diversification is where you buy everything without looking at any data and you say, look, I'm going to buy the entire S&P 500. That guarantees you that if there's a company in the S&P 500 that sucks, you'll be owning it. Let me say that again. If you buy the whole S&P 500 and saying, I'm not going to do any analysis, I'm just buy it all, if there's a company that sucks in there, you're going to own it. Well, what fundamentals does is says, look, I'm not going to buy companies that are struggling right now, hoping they turn around, and I'm not just going to blindly buy good ones that I think are good, hoping they'll stay there. I'm going to have reasons behind my decision. A good decision, what a good decision feels like is having logical reasons and an argument behind your decision. Now, if things change after that, well, why do you think we have the fourth pillar of risk management? The reason we have the fourth pillar of risk management is there will be a time where we need a plan B. If we didn't, we wouldn't need the fourth pillar. If we could, through fundamentals, get to a point of surety where we knew we were right 100% of the time, then we wouldn't need the risk management pillar, would we? So if you can gain some clarity as you go into this about what a good decision feels like for Warren Buffett or anyone else, a Than Merrill or a Kenny McElroy or even myself, I feel very confident, not in the outcome, but in the data that's driving my decision. And then I'll let risk management. I have this. It's a lot like buying your home. Can you guarantee your home won't burn down? Can you guarantee it won't be swept up in a tornado? Can you guarantee that a flood won't happen? No. But you say, here's some nice bedrooms, here's a great school, here's a nice park, it's close access to the freeway, it's got plenty of room, it's got a vaulted ceiling for my 6'8" head, this is a nice house, got a big garage, it's cool. I can buy this house, and it may burn down tomorrow. Well, guess what? I have insurance. It's okay. I have insurance. So already start feeling what it feels like to make a great investing decision and what it isn't. It doesn't feel like surety. It doesn't feel like guarantees. It certainly doesn't feel like diversification where we just buy everything knowing some are going to suck. It feels like going through a list of criteria to make sure it's right. Let's hop in. Fundamental analysis, you might think of a doctor, and he can't tell me how tall my son's going to be. He can take a guess. He can't tell me what year I'm going to die. He can take a guess. He can't tell me whether I'll be disease-free or not, but he can take a very educated guess. If he says, well, you know what, this is what I do know, Andy. And he could say this to a insurance company. Can he go to the insurance company and say, look, this guy's not going to get in a car wreck, and he's not going to have cancer, he's not going to have any of this? No, he can't say it. But he says, look, his blood pressure is fantastic. His blood sugar is within the bounds. His cholesterol is in check. It's very normal for a person of his age. Reflexes are fantastic. Body mass index is great. That's not me. I'm just pretending. An EKG works great with his heart, okay? So if he can check those boxes, he can say, this is a healthy person. It's a good, solid, healthy person. He doesn't know what's going to happen in the future, but he's starting with a good, healthy person. Well, we can do that with an investment. Is this business bringing money in? If it is, well, that's better than it losing money, isn't it? What do their expenses look like? And are the expenses bigger or smaller than the income? How much do they owe? What do they have? How much cash flows? What's the net worth? What's the equity? If we can say, God, these all look fantastic, we don't know what the future will hold, but at least we know those are looking good. That's a good-looking company we got there. So that's the heart of fundamental analysis, is those numbers right there on the income statement and the balance sheet. There's also one we're going to learn about later called a statement of cash flow, but that's the heart of the fundamental analysis. And there's going to be, 3 levels that we saw this on. Now, in the introduction, I hope you did watch it. I hope you didn't just skip over it, because we hit really solid on the idea that this course is about solving the expense problem. We had Maslow's hierarchy. Families have an expense problem every month to solve. It's a problem to be solved. We go to school for 12 years, 12 years, 16 years, 20 years to solve this problem. It's how we identify who we are. Who are you? What do you do for a living to pay your bills? How do you pay the bills, right? It's so integral in who we are, our identity and our self-concept. Hey, what's your name? Andy. What do you do? I'm a basketball coach. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a nephew. I'm an Eagle Scout. I'm a Scout Master. I'm a churchgoer, or whatever. Whatever you have in your persona. But for some reason, we choose to identify who we are. Andy died. Well, what did he die of? Who cares? But when he lived, he was a postman, or he was a milkman, or he was a doctor, or whatever. We define people on how they solve that problem. It's really interesting. Corporations, they got bills to pay. Nations got bills to pay. So we will start on this one in this section, and then we will progress to learning how to evaluate these. Let's first, though, look at cash flow, and we promised we would do that. This is a cash flow pattern where we ask ourselves, where does the cash come from to pay the bills? So that's what a cash flow pattern is. So one of the ways we'll evaluate a person, a government, a company, is the first question we're going to say is, we all got a bills problem. I got one and you got one. How do you solve yours? And so the answer to this one is you watch the money flow in from the job and then out through the income column. And so we have the income and the expense, and money comes in and money goes out, money comes in and money goes out, money comes in and goes out. And that helps us recognize how this entity or this person solves their income problem. Now, what if he lost his job, or what if he retired? What if there were no job? Then what it would look like? Well, it might look like this. Instead of having new money to solve that problem, we have old money. Now this is kind of fun. Let me draw this right here. There's only 4 boxes, and the expense box never changes. So the only place that we can draw money from expenses is we either could create it from this box, or from this box, or from this box. Those are the only 3 places that this siphon, this hungry, it's like a monster that lives here, and he's opening up cupboard number 1, cupboard number 2, and cupboard number 3. Any food in these cupboards? Any food here? So if we look at this, we say, all right, first cupboard to go to is income. We got a 0 here now. Well, now we'll say, all right, well, let's see if we got any old money. So you could picture it this way. You could say, oh, Harold here is on his treadmill, and he's going about it, and he's got his wife at home, and he's got his job, and one day he comes home, he says, sweetheart, bad news, I don't have a job anymore. So the first thing they'll say is, well, there's going to be no money there to pay bills. We can't go to that cupboard. Where are we going to get it from? Well, didn't we save some money under the mattress? Or don't we have any money in the bank? Or didn't we buy a couple of gold coins we could cash in? What about the money we earned a long time ago? So we have our new bills, but instead of having a new resource of renewable money, we have an old resource. And the problem with old money is I drew an hourglass because, new money is paycheck, pay bills, paycheck, pay bills. There's a chance you'll get more. But old money is a set amount, And so what happens is you start looking this in sense of time, saying, all right, we got 3 months left. We got 3 months of, if we take the money we have under the mattress and the stock we bought that we cash in and the gold we bought, boom. And that's really what retirement looks like. You know, I had a good friend of mine, I was having lunch with him the other day, and he was drafted by the New York Jets as a punter. So here he is, you know, 21 years old, out of college, 22, whatever it was. And they got a $75,000 signing bonus, and he goes to camp and they cut him. So his NFL career was 6 weeks long, and he had $75,000. And that was a great blessing to him to realize, well, how long will that last me? You know, Vanguard comes out every year with how much people have in their 401ks. When you look at people 55 to 65 at Vanguard, the mean, in other words, they have all these people up here and all these people below, but the guy in the mean has $61,000, less than my friend's signing bonus to last him. Well, if that's 65 years to 85 years, that 20 years is all it is, that's $257 a month, and then it runs out in that time period. So this is a tough thing for 401k people, for retirement people, is they're trying to pay a new bill with money they earned a long time ago. So it's an interesting thing for cash flow. So again, I'm going very slow and very methodical on purpose to give you a chance for your brain to digest the idea that says, okay, look, there's new bills. If I don't have new money and that cash flow pattern is cut off, okay, where's the cash going to flow from? Well, now the cash is flowing out of the asset column to be dwindled away in bills, and it puts an hourglass on it, puts a time bomb on it. Interesting stuff. Now, of course, if we have this 3 months here, right, this 3 months, and the 3 months runs out, now we got no job and no income. Now we got no, yeah, where am I from? Murray, Utah. There you go. We have no income. We have no assets left. Now we borrow money. We say, well, you know, you sit down at the kitchen table and Harold looks at his sweetheart, or sweetheart looks at Harold and says, gee whiz, we don't have a job anymore. We've spent all the money that we saved that was old, the money we earned a long time ago. How are we going to pay these bills? We're still hungry. Well, let's put it on a credit card. And that also creates an hourglass because you have what's called a credit limit. So when it comes to expenses, it really doesn't discriminate where the money came from. Look, you might have 3 months. Let's say you have $15,000 saved and you're $5,000 a month for 3 months. Or you have $15,000 of a credit limit on a credit card. To the expense column, it's just 3 months of bill paying. That's all it is. So both of these have a limit to them. That's why they have hourglasses. There's a limit to how much you have saved, and there's a limit usually to how much a person has borrowed. And so those are three and we're going to get into more elaborate cash flow patterns, but in basic fundamental analysis, a great way to think of it is, okay, how do these guys pay their bills? And what does the cash flow look like to pay their bills? Now, let's look at each of these three people. If you were a bank, which one would you most likely want to give a new mortgage to or loan a ton of money to? Would it be someone? Well, I guess it depends on how much old money they have and how much borrowed money. You would care about this if you were a bank, right? You would want to know how you're going to get paid back, and that's a real key. You know, how am I going to get my money back if I'm a bank if I invest it in person one, person two, and person three? And by looking into these numbers, if we actually put real numbers to them, I'll bet you anything we could come up with a favorite candidate. You see that? If we put numbers to how much this guy has and what his assets and liabilities are and how much this guy has and what his assets, if we put numbers to all three of those boxes to ask the question, okay, how could this guy pay his bills? We could pick a nation that we liked the most. We could pick a stock that we liked the most. And if we're a person, we could pick a person we'd like to give a mortgage to the most. Let me say it again. If you put numbers to all three of these boxes and watched how they paid their bills, there's no question that even a basic, basic intelligent guy like you and I, people like us, would be able to find someone we like the best. And it would depend on what those numbers looked like. Now, oh, this isn't good. if you don't have anything here, and you don't have anything here, and you don't have anything here, the new bills will still be wanting to get paid. And that's bankruptcy and welfare, and it's just the lowest way to live. It's not fun at all. That's the one you want to avoid, is that right there. And we have names for these cash flow patterns. You'll see them all around you. These cash flow patterns have names that you'll be familiar with. This one's called the rat race. That's what the cash flow pattern looks like. This one's called savings or retirement, or 401ks in my home country, or SEPs, or RRSPs in Canada, or supers in Australia, or 401ks in Japan. They use the same thing in Japan. And this is what the U.S. government and Greece and Venezuela and Japan look like in their government. And then this is what Hostess looks like, and what Detroit looks like, and what San Bernardino looked like in California. And Stockton, California looks like this. And Delta Airlines did this. So did GM. So did Hostess. And so did Enron. And we can see these cash flow patterns readily. And again, I will say it again. As soon as we begin to put numbers in those three boxes, as soon as you begin to put numbers in these three boxes right here, 1, 2, and 3, as soon as these get actual numbers in them, and you get numbers of the bills, you can find a favorite. You can find the horse that you feel is going to be the best. Now, it doesn't mean they'll win the race, but as a doctor going through a patient, I'll bet my doctor could take me, my wife, maybe my brother, and maybe a sister, and examine us all, and he could look at the numbers and say, okay, when it comes to BMI, Andy, you're last place. He could come to me and say, but Andy, when it comes to heart rate, you're in first place maybe. But he'd say, overall, I'll tell you which one of you I feel is the most healthy. Now, that doesn't help him necessarily guarantee who's going to die first or who will live the longest. But it just makes sense if he was going to invest in a life insurance policy for some of us, that he'd have a reason for making the decision. And what a good decision looks like is one that has been thought through and has logic to it, where you can say, look, after looking at these numbers, it is obvious which person is in the lead, or which business would be the best out of those, or which government would be leading. We don't know where it's going to go from here for sure, but we do know where they are now. And it makes sense to take at least what you do know into consideration. Now, there's a pattern you saw here of going from new money to old money to borrowed money to no money. Let me say that again. It's that pattern. Most new bills like to be answered with new money. New bills like less to be answered with old money. That's why people in a 401k or an IRA say, maybe I can't retire yet because my hourglass doesn't have enough sand in it. There's just not enough old money here to keep up with those new bills. So I guess I'll stay over here in the rat race longer, right? And of course, governments, if you can print money, well, what the heck? Why wouldn't you, right? If you can borrow unlimited amounts of money and print unlimited money, it makes sense that you would gravitate towards this. Why work for a living? Why be smart and save and have thrift for a living? If you have a license to borrow as much as you want and spend as much as you want, no one's going to keep you in check on that. Why wouldn't you pay your bills this way? No wonder governments do it that way. If no one's going to hold you in check, wouldn't you do it? Look, if you could print money, wouldn't you rather print money than do this? And wouldn't you rather print money than do this? And wouldn't you rather spend than save? This is the greatest freaking thing in the world right here. If no one's going to keep you in check, wouldn't you do it that way? And then, of course, if all of these are unavailable, this is the death of the entity. You got to reboot and declare Chapter 11 bankruptcy if you're a corporation. If you'd like to know more about Chapter 11 bankruptcy, you can go to Chapter 11 of 401 Chaos. Because in my book, 401 Chaos, in Chapter 11, guess what it's called? Chapter 11 is on Chapter 11. So there you go. That was not my idea. That was Ken McElroy's idea. So he's kind of a funny dude. So We operate at a deficit. As soon as you have that expense and that income is smaller than the expense. In other words, if the income is less than the expense, you're in a deficit right there. If the income is greater than the expense, you're in a surplus or cash flow. And if the passive income is greater than the expense, you're financially free and solid and money and awesome. So the first thing before bankruptcy is they start to have to find a different place to pay their bills. As soon as the new money coming in from sales, or the new money coming in from taxes, or the new money coming in from a job is not sufficient, it must be supplemented either with old money or with borrowed money. It usually happens in that order. And once those wells run dry and they begin to default, and they can't pay for obligations, it's not too far before they're bankrupt and they're foreclosed on, or they're liquidated, or whatever happens. So there's one more cash flow pattern in this that we're going to look at before we get into more elaborate ones. This is the cash flow pattern that is, I would say, is probably the most healthy of the five that we see here. Is that this old money was invested for up and down capital gains, where the price of gold might go up and the price of gold might go down on my golden nest egg. But this is a golden goose over here, and golden goose is, this is about the value of an egg going up and down, but this guy will lay eggs, and that will produce new money for new bills. So this one uses both the asset and the income in tandem, in partnership. It says, look, we're going to double up our power, and really healthy ones use all three, in that they say, look, we'll borrow this to get this here. This is the ultimate financial statement right here, in my opinion. It's just my opinion, that instead of the cash flow flowing through the income column at the beginning, it would flow from borrowed money to assets that create cash flow that return the borrowed money plus some golden eggs for you on top. This to me is financial intelligence right there. If I can see someone who has that, that's what, I have some really wealthy friends that have really helped me learn a lot, and guys that have really showed me this. And if I look at, like, most people know, when they talk to me, they know I wrote a book in the Rich Dad series, and I've been friends with Kim and Robert Kiyosaki for, years and years and years now. And they say, well, what are they like and all that? Well, this is what they look like. This is exactly what they do. Exactly. You look at Kenny McElroy, Than Merrill, Josh and Lisa Lannon, all these guys I know. I could just name drop forever. This is what it looks like. They borrow, they turn it into an asset. The asset spits off income. They're able to pay their bills, and they have extra for positive cash flow. And they just keep that cycle going, and they build it. Nowhere is a job in that equation, because it doesn't take financial intelligence to get a job. It takes academic intelligence to get a job. It takes intelligence to get a job, just not financial. Tremendous financial education to be able to raise capital, convert it into an asset, have it produce new cash and new bills. And if my sons say, I want to be a doctor, I'll say, go here. There's nothing wrong with serving people and making the sick well. That's fine to do. If they say, I'm scared of the sight of blood, and I'd rather give to the charity and donate to the hospital and make my contribution by being a person who donates to hospitals, well, then I'd recommend this one. Because this one doesn't require work. It requires financial education and working for assets and working for the raising of capital. So I'm just going to check in and say, in my opinion, that's one to consider. But in reality, you can do any of them. I mean, the bills are getting paid on everyone but this one. And, just which is more stressful, which is more solid, what do you want? It's all your choice. So we're going a little longer on this one, but it's good education. So let's keep going and start looking at this now in tandem. That what we really look at now is you expand from one income statement to two or more. And you start to see where the cash is flowing and who is getting the better of the deal, and how it works and all this. So this is the cash flow pattern of employment. Now I've added not just the worker but also the employer there. And we can see that cash flow pattern. This is the cash flow pattern of a defined benefit retirement, where this pension is on the books, where it creates an expense that gives this guy a check and he pays his new bills. And this defined benefit retirement was the type of thing you had in the 50s, where you could go to the Studebaker car company and work there for a bunch of years, and you start there in the 30s and then get, or whenever they started, and in the 1950s you retire, and they say, well, we'll keep paying you even though you're not working anymore. So this was like a taste of passive income. Now, it wasn't a lot, it wasn't a way to get rich, but it was a way to not work and have someone else pay your bills. And I can see why that caught on, because look who's winning in that deal. That's a loser for the employer for sure, right? Look where the cash flow is going. At least over here, they're getting work that creates sales of some kind, right? That gets them a benefit, what we call operational capital. But over here, or operational cash flow. But over here, this is a loser for the employer. It's sure nice when they're there, but once they retire, that's a liability. And this is what drove United Airlines out of business, and what drove GM and the Studebaker come out of business. Right now, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, they put out a press release about a month ago that said their situation is dire. So the government agency that guarantees these pensions for workers is in dire straits. They're about 5 years from what they call insolvency, if you remember that word. They're 5 years away from insolvency. So as you learn to think of it in this way, the banks, your mortgage is your liability and the bank's asset. Your mortgage payment is your expense, but the bank's income. And as you begin to look at these more than one financial statement side by side, clear winners and clear losers begin to emerge. This is how it used to be, with that retirement I was talking about. Well, they didn't like this. So these employers, my book 401 Chaos, I write about this. They said, we want to get rid of this, and we want to get rid of this and make you look like that. So think about how huge that is. Just pause for a moment. Just pause for a moment and see if you can have an epiphany happen right here. There's a real opportunity for epiphany. Is all of a sudden you say in the 80s, after Ted Bennett got a hold of this, who was a retirement specialist, he says, hey, why don't we go to the employers and say we can get rid of your liabilities and get rid of your pensions, and we can take their retirement cash flow going from income to new bills to assets to new bills. You see that? And most people don't have the lighting and the glasses and the financial education to see the profound change in cash flow coming from an employer to now coming from a 401k. The source of bill paying money is now going from a check where they have a responsibility to come up with that money to where now you have responsibility, and it's exposed to all the ups and downs of the stock market now. All the ups and downs of the stock market. So what happens is the target became a net worth issue where this is a cash flow issue. Notice how in this scenario, in this retirement scenario, you get out of the rat race by getting in retirement, but notice that no money flows through the asset or liability column here. Here we have asset money it's flowing out of right here. So as you get more and more accustomed, hopefully what you're saying right now is you're like, okay, Andy said I was going to have some aha moments where things would click, and you're saying, okay, wait, if I start looking at cash flow and really starting to pay attention to how things change in my financial statement, maybe I can begin to shape this. Maybe I can begin to make better decisions and decide what a good program is and who the winners are and who the losers are, or if there are win-wins. You'll find that there's cash flow investments and capital gain investments. Gold, if all of a sudden you have to pay new bills, gold goes right from here into the new bills, and you lose the amount of gold. You have to sell an ounce at a time, right? So the gold begins to diminish in that hourglass that I talked about. And the gold price can go up and down. The price of gold, maybe here's like $1,000 an ounce, and maybe here's $1,600 an ounce, and maybe here's $1,300. It can go up and down, but it's not producing new money. It never produces new money. And hopefully the gold would grow faster than it's leaking out, which is not likely. It's not likely. So gold would be more of a capital gain investment. It doesn't say you couldn't be creative in ways to cash flow it, but as it stands here in this example and in this picture, gold is gold. It's not going to produce new gold. A home, however, this is some of the most exciting income that I look at. There were times in my life where I made tremendous money. I was a real good salesman, back in the day. I could really sell. And so I used to get some pretty hefty commission checks for being a good salesman back when I was first married. But I got to tell you, I remember our first rent check. I remember the first time we got a house with a tenant in it. The tenant's name was Laban. It was in South Jordan, Utah. And we bought this house. He had this cute little family, and his daughter had cerebral palsy. She's in a wheelchair, and this house was so perfect for them that I actually wound up giving them a killer deal, and I sold them the house because it belonged to them. But they rented that house for me first before they were able to arrange to buy it. And I just remember that small little rent check. The cash flow on it after we paid the mortgage and the insurance was $500. That's all it was. And I was making much more at my job than $500. But I got to tell you, this little $500, that first one we ever did, that first little $500 was the sweetest, most wonderful money that I'd had. It was just so awesome to have passive income and to have my bills being paid through this cash flow pattern as opposed to this or a job. Well, the house can still go up and down in value, just like the price of home's free to move, but it's actually the rent we care about because it's the rent that will deal with the expenses. Do you see the difference right there? That the gold that is going to deal with expenses by going up and down and getting sold off in pieces. Here the house is not sold off. Time is sold per month. And so the house now is free to move with the ebb and flow of the market because it's not the home price that pays the bills, it's the rent that is dealing with expenses. Here the gold price must deal with expenses. So one of the things to understand at the outset in fundamental analysis is, as we look for investments, are we going to look at investments that are going to cash flow? Or are we going to look at investments for capital gain, or both, or neither, or hedge, or what have you? And these are just great basic, this is the financial education that I people ask me for help. This is what I give them because this is what I wish I would have had in school. Knowing what I know now, I wish that as a sophomore in high school, someone would have written these slides out, taken me and said, Andy, look, just learn a basic cash flow pattern. Learn that. If I'd have learned that when I was a sophomore in high school, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm not complaining where I am, don't get me wrong, but boy, I think of how much sooner I could have got there. Wow, it's just incredible. It's just awesome. So again, this course is really about dealing with the expense problem. And traditional schooling doesn't even teach this, but it teaches you to solve your Maslow problems, your bill problems, your expense problem with a job. It doesn't really teach any of this other stuff. It just teaches a job. And it says, look, go get a job and work and pay bills and save a little money so when you're old, you'll have enough saved to last you. And with $61,000 as the median amount saved for the average Vanguard 401k investor at age 55 to 65, with 61,000 being the middle guy, that's just not enough money to last 20 years. That's $257 a month. And so you wind up here longer. And so this becomes very important to that cash flow pattern. I'll tell you, if my son says, Dad, I'm not interested in this, I want to do this, I want them to go to Yale or Harvard, and I want them to, I'd really like them to be in the NBA. If you're going to work, that's a pretty cool job. Go in the NBA and get new money to pay your bills so you'll have enough to really live well. Your school that you'd go to would have to be Duke University, or if you're going to go to med school, maybe it's Hopkins or something, something like that. Where are you trained? Mayo Clinic. It's so important to have the best school. But for those that really love the idea of borrowed money, right, turned into assets, creating money, this incredible financial freedom, this is the essence, I think. If someone were to say, Andy, draw a picture of what financial education is, I think this is what I would draw, is borrowing money into here, turning that into an asset that turns into new golden eggs, and it's how to create a golden goose. Financial education is not about the price of the golden eggs going up and down and having enough eggs. It's the producing of the new money from having a golden goose rather than a job. I think the thing that Rich Dad Poor Dad did for me is I just remember, the page. I remember where it was on the page that he just said he had a little dot here like this and a little thing that went like that, and he had, income, expenses, asset, and liability. I just remember when I saw the little dot and I realized that cash flow pattern that looks like this, I wanted to learn how to get these, and it just goes boom and boom and boom, and that completes it. So it's just incredible. It's just awesome. The purpose of this first lesson was very basic, and hopefully for some of you it might have been a review. Maybe it was for you. But to understand this basic idea, let's just review it, of how do you solve the bills problem? Is it with new money or old money? Is it with borrowed money? Is it you're not doing it? Are you bankrupt? Are you dependent on government assistance or family or church? Or are you someone who is just self-sufficient, who knows how to borrow, to buy, to cash flow and repay? This is financial education. A thing that's interesting is notice that moving from a job to retirement is just one step away from bankruptcy. You're just moving closer to bankruptcy when you do that. This is a move away from bankruptcy, and this is a move towards bankruptcy. In fact, under this system for most people, bankruptcy is just a matter of time because of this hourglass. And it's just a race against time. That's not the best way to live, in my opinion. So as we go through this, we're going to do more of these financial statements. We're going to have a lot of fun doing it. When we come back in the next segment, I'm not going to give you any homework here. I think this is a good enough of a review, hopefully, or even if it's new to you, it was simple enough that you don't need homework. Now, if you want, you could go begin looking at your own financial statement and seeing what your cash flow pattern looks like and trying to draw out your own cash flow pattern. That would be fine. But I'm not going to give you any homework on this one. I think you're ready to hop into the next one. I'll let you determine when you're ready, because when we come back, we're going to dive deeper into your personal financial statement and really get into this, and that will prepare us to get into corporate and sovereign. So there's an introduction to financial statements and cash flow. Basic, super basic entry level, fundamental analysis.